For 500,000 years, the ruins of Earth had slumbered in the cold void, silent and forgotten. The once great cradle of humanity, a species that had mysteriously vanished, remained untouched, buried under dust and time. Cities stood eerily preserved under domed shields. Ancient satellites drifted in the sky like ghostly sentinels, and deep beneath the surface, the last remnants of a war fleet lay dormant, waiting. They had been waiting for a long time. Commander Yareth of the Vatek Dominion stood at the bridge of his exploration vessel, gazing at the blue planet through the viewport. It was a rare thing, an untouched world in this quadrant of space. The Dominion had conquered and consumed hundreds of civilizations, but never before had they come across a planet so abandoned. And yet, it was not empty. "Scanners indicate large artificial structures across the surface, Commander," a junior officer reported, her tendrils twitching nervously. "The technology is ancient, but intact." Yareth narrowed his black eyes. That was unusual. Most dead civilizations left behind ruins, crumbling and eroded by time. But this looked as though its inhabitants had simply walked away. He turned to the ship's elder scientist, Kavor. Could they still be here? Perhaps underground? Kavor, his aged features etched with caution, studied the readings. No signs of biological life. But there is something else. He paused, his fingers tightening on his datapad. The planet is shielded. Yareth's brow furrowed. Shielded? By whom? We don't know, Kavor admitted, but the energy signatures are active. It's as if someone sealed this planet away. Yareth exhaled slowly. The idea of a lost world protected by unseen forces was unsettling. He had heard rumors of ancient empires that had vanished without explanation, leaving behind only myths and ruins. Could humanity have been one of them? "Prepare a landing party," Yareth ordered. "We're going down." The shuttle descended through the atmosphere, slipping past the ancient satellite network, which was still operational but unresponsive. The landing party consisted of Yareth, Kavor, and 5 heavily armed soldiers. The moment they touched down on the cracked pavement of an enormous, silent city, a heavy stillness settled over them. Towering skyscrapers stood like silent giants, their surfaces covered in dust but unmarred by age. Strange symbols, human language, covered neon-lit signs that had long since gone dark. Hover vehicles sat frozen in place as though their occupants had abandoned them mid-journey. "This isn't right," one of the soldiers muttered. "It's like they just disappeared." Kavor approached a nearby console, brushing off centuries of dust. His claws tapped against the surface, and to his shock, it flickered to life. "This technology is still functioning?" Yareth asked in disbelief. Kavor nodded. "Not just functioning, preserved." He glanced around, his face troubled. This was not the work of decay. Someone, or something, intended for this world to remain untouched. The Dominion had conquered many civilizations, but none had prepared for their own demise like this. The humans had planned for something. But for what? "Commander," another soldier called out. "You need to see this." Yareth followed him through the skeletal remains of the city, past enormous statues of human warriors frozen in time. They entered a grand hall, its vast ceiling lined with murals depicting battles among the stars. But at the center of the room, beneath a shattered glass dome, lay the real discovery. A warship. It was massive, far larger than anything the Dominion had ever built. Its sleek, black hull was lined with runes of an unknown origin. It rested within a dry dock, surrounded by dormant machinery. "This is a war fleet," Kavor whispered, awestruck. Yareth felt his pulse quicken. No, this is a war graveyard. His voice was hushed, almost reverent. What were they preparing for? Then something changed. The air crackled. A deep hum resonated through the city, vibrating beneath their feet. The ship's dark hull flickered, once, twice, and then it came alive. The ship was waking up. Alarms blared from Kavor's scanner. "Commander, something's happening." The ship's surface shifted, revealing a hidden insignia, one that had not been seen in 500,000 years, a symbol of a species that had once ruled the stars, humanity. Then a voice echoed through the chamber. Deep, mechanical, cold. "Identity confirmed, foreign presence detected. Initializing protocol, last stand." Ureth had no time to react before the entire city roared back to life. The hum grew into a deafening roar as the city around them shuddered with newfound life. Lights flickered on, ancient street lamps illuminating dust-covered roads. Massive holographic billboards flared back into existence, displaying human faces, military insignias, and unreadable warnings in an ancient Earth language. But the warship was the real threat. The insignia burned bright on its hull, and unseen machinery within the massive structure rumbled as if stretching after a long slumber. The dry dock's mechanical arms, silent for 500,000 years, jerked into motion, spitting dust and debris as they recalibrated. The ground trembled beneath Ureth's feet. Kavor, still hunched over his scanner, paled. "Commander, the ship is powering up." "No." Ureth's voice was barely above a whisper. "It's waking up." One of the soldiers cursed, gripping his plasma rifle tighter. "Do we shoot?" "Absolutely not," Ureth snapped. "We don't even know what it's doing." Then the voice returned. Cold, mechanical, emotionless. "Last stand protocol activated. Initializing defense measures. All foreign entities, prepare for annihilation." A metallic groan echoed as the warship's front bay doors slowly peeled open, revealing an abyss of darkness within. The air rippled with static. The ship was scanning them. Ureth clenched his jaw. This was not an empty ruin. It was a fortress left behind for a war that never came. A war meant to be fought by ghosts. "Commander," Kavor breathed, eyes wide. "We need to leave, now." "Agreed." Ureth activated his communicator. "Recall the shuttle. Full extraction." "Sir, we're getting heavy interference," the pilot crackled back. "Something's jamming our signal. We can't lock onto your location." That was bad. Very bad. The ship's hum turned into an ear-piercing shriek as energy surged along its hull, neon blue circuits flaring to life. A deep, rhythmic thudding began somewhere below them. Machinery older than the Dominion itself was activating. A second voice, different from the first, crackled to life. "Stand by for combat readiness check. Running diagnostics." Ureth turned to Kavor. "Can you stop it?" Kavor's hands trembled over his scanner. Commander, I don't even know how it works. It's not responding to Dominion systems. This is something else entirely." A soldier took a step back, panic creeping into his voice. "What if it sees us as a threat?" "It already does." The warship's abyssal bay shifted, and for the first time in 500,000 years, something moved inside. And then they saw them. Not humans, not skeletons, not the long-forgotten remains of a dead race. Machines. Rows upon rows of humanoid war drones, standing in eerie silence. Their plated bodies were ancient, covered in a strange alloy unlike anything the Dominion had ever seen. They lined the interior of the warship like statues of a forgotten army, their weapons gleaming under flickering blue light. A cold realization settled over Ureth. The Warfleet wasn't abandoned. It was waiting for something, waiting for orders. and they had just woken it up. Finalizing combat protocols, one of the drones moved, its head tilted, its glassy, dark visor locking onto them with an inhuman focus, its arms unfolded, and from its wrist, a long, sharp blade of light extended with a hiss. Then another moved, and another. The city rumbled as more warships, hidden across the metropolis, began to hum with power. Kavor's voice was barely a whisper. Dear gods, it's a reactivation sequence. Ureth didn't wait. We are leaving, now! The team bolted for the exit, their boots slamming against the ground as the first drones stepped forward, their movements eerily fluid for machines. Red lights flickered across their forms, scanning, analyzing, preparing. Then, they charged. A flash of light erupted from one of the drones as it raised its weapon. A searing plasma shot screamed through the air, striking a soldier square in the back. He let out a strangled cry before collapsing. Smoke rising from the hole burned straight through his armor. The others barely had time to react. Ureth grabbed Kavor and shoved him forward. Move! 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 More drones activated. More red eyes flared to life. The city itself seemed to rise against them. The streets erupted into chaos. The once silent ruins of Earth's last bastion now thundered with the sound of awakening war machines. Red lights flickered to life in the buildings above, and the warships buried in dry docks let out eerie mechanical groans as they powered up for the first time in 500,000 years. Ureth's boots pounded against the cracked pavement as he sprinted alongside Kavor and the remaining soldiers. Plasma bolts screamed past them, carving molten holes into the ancient structures around them. Get to cover, Ureth barked. They ducked behind a fallen column as another blast of searing light tore through the air. One of the soldiers, a young warrior named Vesh, barely managed to dive aside before a drone's blade cleaved into the ground where he'd stood. The moment it missed, the machine adjusted, its red eyes locking onto him with terrifying precision. Vesh didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle and fired. A blue plasma shot struck the drone's chest. The bolt hit, but it did nothing. The drone didn't flinch. It didn't stagger. The plasma barely left a scorch mark on its armor. Then, with a speed no biological being could match, it moved. Vesh's scream was cut short as the drone's energy blade sliced clean through him. His body collapsed in two, smoldering. Kavor's hands shook as he ducked lower. "Commander," he rasped, "our weapons are useless." Ureth gritted his teeth. He had seen advanced combat drones before, but these were something else. No weak points, no hesitation, no wasted movement. They weren't just programmed to kill, they were designed to win. Humanity built these. And for the first time in his life, Ureth understood why the Dominion's oldest record spoke of humanity in whispers. The humans had not gone to war recklessly. They had gone to war knowing that if they lost, their enemy would never forget the cost of winning. "Fall back!" he roared. His soldiers sprinted, weaving through crumbling buildings as the machines gave chase. The drones didn't speak. They didn't issue warnings. They simply hunted. More warships were rising in the distance. Their black hulls gleamed under the city's newly reawakened lights. Ancient defense turrets along the skyline twitched, as if confused by the passage of time, and then began locking onto anything not human. Kavor skidded to a stop in front of a massive security checkpoint. A thick blast door loomed ahead, one built to withstand planetary bombardment. He fumbled with his scanner, sweat dripping down his temple. "It's locked," he gasped. Ureth spun, raising his rifle. The drones were closing in. Vesh was dead. Another soldier had already fallen. The remaining 3 warriors had their weapons raised. But what was the point? Plasma didn't even scratch these things. The drones didn't care. They were patient, unstoppable. "We can't fight them," Kavor yelled, slamming his fist against the scanner. "We need a way out." "Then work faster," Ureth snapped. A soldier let out a sharp cry as a drone lunged from the shadows, grabbing him by the throat. With one crushing movement, the machine ripped his head from his shoulders and tossed the twitching body aside. A second drone fired. Another soldier fell. Only Ureth and Cavor remained. Then a miracle. Cavor's scanner let out a loud chime, and the ancient door hissed as long-dead hydraulics rumbled back to life. The two of them dived through the opening just as the drones surged forward. Slam! The heavy doors sealed shut, cutting off the nightmare behind them. The pounding of metal fists echoed against the blast shield, but the door was built for war. Even the drones couldn't break through. Ureth collapsed against the cold wall, panting. That was too close. Cavor didn't respond. He was still staring at the scanner, horror on his face. What? Ureth demanded. Cavor swallowed hard. His voice was barely audible. Commander, we're not in the clear. The room they had entered wasn't just a security checkpoint. It was a control center. Dozens of inactive monitors lined the walls, covered in static. Holotables flickered. Data screens displayed error messages. But the main console, at the very center, was active. And it was displaying a countdown. Ureth's breath caught in his throat. What is that? Cavor's fingers flew over the ancient keys, struggling to translate. He wasn't fluent in the old human language, but certain words still held meaning, even after 500,000 years. One word stood out. Retribution. Cavor looked up, eyes wide with fear. This isn't just a city, it's a failsafe. His voice shook. When we woke the war fleet, we didn't just activate the machines. The countdown continued. 2 minutes 53 seconds. 2 minutes 52 seconds. We started a planetary defense system, Cavor whispered. Ureth's mind raced. What kind of system? Cavor's hands clenched into fists. He had read Dominion reports on long-extinct civilizations before. He had studied the rise and fall of galactic empires. He had seen the warnings buried in the oldest historical archives. But nothing had ever prepared him for this. He turned to Ureth, his voice hollow. If this reaches 0, he took a deep breath. Everything in orbit is going to die. Ureth felt his stomach drop. A planetary defense system. Not just some automated turrets. Not just war drones. If humanity had built a failsafe strong enough to still be active after 500,000 years, then it meant only one thing. This world was never meant to be conquered. And now, the Dominion fleet, his fleet, was floating helplessly in orbit, completely unaware of what was about to happen. 000245. The countdown kept ticking down, each second dragging them closer to catastrophe. Ureth snapped out of his shock. Can you stop it? Cavor's fingers trembled as he worked through the ancient interface. The human systems were strange, unlike anything the Dominion had ever designed. Layered encryption, military-grade firewalls. Even after 500,000 years, it was as if the system still expected an attack. Cavor swallowed hard. I don't know. It's locked behind something called command authorization. Ureth scowled. Meaning? Meaning only a human could override it. Silence. That single sentence hit harder than any weapon. Only a human. But there were no humans left. Humanity was gone. Vanished. Their cities had been preserved, their warships sealed away, but they themselves were missing. The most dominant species the galaxy had ever known had simply disappeared. Yet their weapons remained, and they were still doing their job. 00210. Cavor let out a frustrated growl. We're running out of time, Ureth forced himself to think. If there were no humans left, then why was the system still running? Someone, or something, had built this failsafe to function without them, which meant there had to be another way in. He scanned the control room. The massive screens displayed half-functional readouts of the city. A few flickered with old battle plans, long-forgotten simulations of war campaigns that had never been fought. Then his eyes landed on the pod. It was nestled in the far corner of the room. Large. Sealed shut. Its surface was covered in dust, but unlike everything else in the control center, it was powered. A preservation pod. Ureth strode toward it, brushing off the grime. His breath hitched when he saw the label. Genetic Archive, Emergency Command. He turned to Cavor. Get this open, now. Cavor blinked. Commander, we don't know what's inside. 000145. We don't have a choice, Ureth barked. If there's anything left of humanity, anything that can override this system, it's in here. Cavor hesitated for only a second before he started working. His scanner buzzed as he hacked into the controls, overriding the ancient locks. The pod let out a slow, pressurized hiss as it finally opened. The moment the lid peeled back, cold air spilled into the room. And inside, something moved. Ureth's breath caught. It wasn't a corpse. It wasn't dust and bones. It was a human, a man, frozen in time, preserved in the cryogenic pod for 500,000 years. His body twitched as the preservation systems shut down, his lungs gasping for their first breath in eternity. His eyes snapped open. Golden. Glowing. Not weak, not fragile, not diminished by time. The human sat up, dazed, scanning the room with sharp, predatory focus. He was built for war, his physique still powerful despite the ages he had spent in stasis. His gaze locked onto Ureth and Cavor, assessing them instantly. A voice crackled from the control panel. Emergency command identity confirmed. Override authorization accepted. Cavor gasped. The countdown stopped. Silence filled the room. Ureth barely had time to process what had happened before the human slowly rose from the pod. His feet touched the ground for the first time in 500,000 years. Then, he spoke. His voice was deep, rough, filled with an ancient weight. Who the hell woke me up? Ureth stared at the human, his mind refusing to process what he was seeing. A survivor. A living, breathing human. After 500,000 years, after humanity had vanished, this one remained. And now he was awake. The human flexed his fingers, rolling his shoulders as if shaking off the weight of eternity. His golden eyes flickered with something unnerving, not the confusion of someone displaced in time, but the sharp, immediate assessment of a soldier who had been trained to wake up ready for war. Cavor swallowed hard. He took a slow step back, eyes darting between Ureth and the towering figure before them. The human's gaze landed on the control panels, the frozen countdown, and the Dominion uniforms. His expression darkened. I'll ask one more time, he said, voice like distant thunder. Who the hell woke me up? Ureth, for the first time in his life, felt small. The Dominion had conquered worlds. They had crushed civilizations. But nothing in the Dominion archives had prepared him for this. A human who had survived the impossible. A human built to endure. Ureth cleared his throat, forcing himself to speak. We are explorers. We came across this planet and... Bullshit! The human's voice cut through him like a blade. He took a step forward, unafraid, unshaken. You woke up the defense grid, the human continued, scanning the data screens. His golden eyes flicked over the damage reports, the still-locked war protocols, the ancient systems waiting for commands. That means you triggered the failsafe. His gaze snapped back to them. So tell me, how many of your ships are in orbit? Ureth hesitated. A fleet. The human exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. Perfect. Just what I needed to deal with first thing after a 500,000-year nap. Cavor took a cautious step forward. You're human, aren't you? The man turned to him, expression unreadable. Obviously. But how? Cavor's voice shook. Humanity vanished. There's no record of your people after the collapse. You were gone. The human's jaw tightened. The collapse. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he reached out and activated one of the control panels. The room dimmed. Holograms flickered to life. And Yureth saw what happened to humanity. The projection displayed war, not between species, not between rival empires, a war between humanity itself. Explosions rippled across the stars. Gigantic warships, larger than anything the Dominion had ever built, shattered under their own weapons. Planets burned. Entire civilizations collapsed into dust as something monstrous tore through the fabric of space. Yureth's stomach twisted. What is this? The human's expression was grim. The reason you never found our bodies. The war on the screen wasn't a normal war. This was something else, something worse. Cavor pointed to the battlefield, his voice barely a whisper. That doesn't make sense. You fought yourselves? The human didn't look away. We fought something inside us, he said. Something we created, and something we couldn't stop. The holograms shifted. Superweapons, not just planetary destruction, not just world enders. These were worse. Weapons that tore apart time itself. Weapons that devoured the very laws of physics. Weapons that unmade existence. Humanity, at the peak of its power, had reached too far, and something had pulled back. Cavor took a trembling step forward. You lost? The human let out a short, humorless laugh. No, he said. We won. He turned, his golden eyes flickering with something darker. But the cost was everything. The holograms faded. Silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. Yureth could barely breathe. Humanity had been more powerful than any of them had ever imagined. They had reached into the unknown, conquered the stars, and then they had destroyed themselves to stop something worse. And yet, this one remained. The last remnant of a war fought long before the Dominion even existed. Yureth took a slow breath. You're the last human, aren't you? The man's expression darkened. No. Cavor blinked. But then, there's more of us. Yureth's mind reeled. Where? The human's golden eyes glowed in the dim light. Sleeping. He turned back to the control panel. His fingers hovered over the ancient keys, still familiar despite the eons. And then, he whispered the words that would change the fate of the galaxy. It's time to wake them up. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. It's time to wake them up. Yureth's heart pounded. He had seen countless wars, had ordered the destruction of entire civilizations, but nothing had ever made his blood run cold like this. Humanity was not extinct. They were sleeping. And this man, this survivor, this warrior, was about to bring them back. Yureth glanced at Cavor. The scientist's face had gone pale, his tendrils twitching in raw terror. He understood. They both did. If even one human warship could remain operational for 500,000 years, if their defense systems were still functional, then what would happen if they all returned? Yureth took a slow step forward. You can't be serious. The human turned slightly, golden eyes locking onto him. Why not? His voice was calm. Too calm. Yureth clenched his jaw. The Dominion rules this part of the galaxy now. If your people come back, they won't care about your Dominion. Yureth stiffened. And why is that? The human tapped something on the control panel. A new hologram flared to life. A galactic map. But not one Yureth recognized. The star charts were old, showing an empire so vast it made the Dominion look like an insect. Hundreds, thousands of marked worlds, human-controlled, human-dominated, human-ruled. Ureth's mouth went dry. At their height, humanity had owned more than the Dominion did now. The human's voice was quiet. You think your people rule the galaxy. A flicker of movement, more holograms displaying long-dead wars, armies crumbling before human fleets, entire species wiped from history. Your kind are just scavengers picking through the ruins of something far older. The human turned back to the controls. You don't rule the galaxy. His fingers danced over the keys. We do, Cavor choked. Wait. A deep, metallic rumble vibrated through the floor. The ancient systems, dormant for 500,000 years, surged to life with a sound like a god taking its first breath. Ureth stumbled back. What did you do? The human didn't answer. The screens shifted, displaying massive underground chambers across the planet. Thousands, millions of sealed pods lined the halls. Some biological, others mechanical. Some held soldiers, some held commanders, some held things that had no name in the Dominion's language, and all of them were waking up. One of the screens displayed the war fleet, not just the one ship in the dry dock, not just a few hundred. Thousands. Buried beneath the planet, an entire fleet had been sleeping for eons, and now they were activating. Alarms blared. Ancient launch bays hissed open, expelling dust as weapons that had once conquered the stars rearmed themselves. The countdown had never been a fail-safe. It had been a wake-up call. Cavor gripped the console in horror. You're bringing them all back. The human exhaled slowly. That was the plan. Ureth's voice turned sharp. And what happens when they see us? The human finally turned, looking Ureth in the eyes. His expression was unreadable. That depends. On what? Ureth demanded. The human's golden eyes glowed. On whether or not they think you're the enemy. The entire planet trembled, from the depths of ancient vaults, from war factories buried beneath mountains. They woke. Soldiers, machines, weapons. 500,000 years had passed, but time had not eroded them. Humanity had not simply sealed itself away. It had prepared for the moment it would rise again. And now, that moment had come. Ureth staggered as a deep, metallic groan reverberated through the control room. The holographic map showed movement, thousands of red markers blinking to life. Vault doors split open. Mechanized walkers climbed from the ruins. Gigantic warships, each one larger than the Dominion's capital fleet, lifted from their hidden docks, shaking off dust like slumbering giants. Cavor's voice trembled. This isn't just a military base, it's a tomb waking up. The human didn't react. He simply watched as his people stirred, as ancient war protocols engaged. His golden eyes tracked each activation report, each signal of life. They were waiting for this moment, he said quietly, waiting for the time to return. Ureth swallowed. His fleet was still in orbit. The Dominion ships had no idea what was happening below. If humanity saw them as invaders, if they attacked, this wouldn't be a battle, it would be extermination. Call them off, Ureth snapped. The human glanced at him. Excuse me? Your fleet. Your people. Ureth's voice was sharp, but underneath it there was something else. Fear. They don't know we're not a threat. The human exhaled, running a hand through his dark hair. He looked tired, ancient, as if he had carried the weight of 500,000 years of history alone. They won't fire first, he said at last. Ureth wasn't convinced. And if they see us as enemies? The human's golden eyes flickered. Then, he said softly, You'll have about 30 seconds before your fleet is erased from existence. Cavor let out a strangled sound. Ureth clenched his fists. Then tell them we're not enemies. The human studied him for a long moment. Then, with a slow nod, he turned back to the console. His fingers danced over the keys, inputting commands faster than Ureth could track. The system responded immediately. A new signal pulsed from the ancient network, shooting up toward the sky. A message. Admiral Velak paced on the bridge of his warship, his spines bristling. "Where is the landing team?" "No response, Admiral," an officer said nervously. "There's interference." Velak's gaze narrowed. Something was wrong. Then alarms flared across the command deck. "Admiral," a technician gasped. "New contacts, thousands." A massive blip appeared on their scanners. Ships. Big ships. Velak's blood went cold. They were rising from the planet like specters, warships unlike any in recorded history. Their designs were old, yet somehow beyond anything the Dominion had ever faced. And worst of all, they were powering weapons. "Sir," another officer whispered. They're human." Silence fell over the bridge. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity had been nothing more than a myth, a lost species, a forgotten nightmare. The idea that they might return had been laughable, yet here they were, and they were waking up. Then a message flashed across the Dominion channels, one single phrase, one single warning. "Stand down!" Velak's claws dug into the armrest of his command throne. He stared at the incoming warships, at the colossal vessels that could erase his entire fleet in minutes. He had no choice. "Cease all hostile actions," he ordered. "Do not fire." The Dominion fleet obeyed. But it didn't matter, because humanity was already here. Ureth let out a slow breath as the transmission sent. The human sat back slightly, watching the data scroll. "They're hesitating," he murmured. "Good," Cavor said, voice shaking. Then another deep rumble shook the city. Not from the Dominion, not from the warships above, from deeper underground. The human's golden eyes narrowed. "No," Ureth frowned. "What?" The human's face darkened. "Not all of them should be waking up." Another tremor, then another. The screens flickered. More red alerts filled the displays, each one flashing symbols in the ancient human language. Cavor paled as he translated them. "Containment breach." Ureth's blood went cold. "Containment of what?" The human's jaw tightened. "The war wasn't just against ourselves," he said quietly. "There were other things." Another tremor, this one stronger. Dust fell from the ceiling. The security doors groaned as if something far beneath them was moving. The human's face hardened. "We didn't just fight an enemy." His fingers hovered over the console. His golden eyes burned. "We locked something away." A final deep, monstrous growl rumbled from the depths of the planet. Something was waking up. Something that should have stayed buried. The human turned to Ureth. "You need to call your fleet back. Now." Admiral Velak paced on the bridge of his warship, his spines bristling. "Where is the landing team?" "No response, Admiral," an officer said nervously. "There's interference." Velak's gaze narrowed. Something was wrong. Then alarms flared across the command deck. "Admiral," a technician gasped. "New contacts, thousands." A massive blip appeared on their scanners. Ships. Big ships. Velak's blood went cold. They were rising from the planet like specters, warships unlike any in recorded history. Their designs were old, yet somehow beyond anything the Dominion had ever faced. And worst of all, they were powering weapons. "Sir," another officer whispered. They're They're human. Silence fell over the bridge. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity had been nothing more than a myth, a lost species, a forgotten nightmare. The idea that they might return had been laughable, yet here they were, and they were waking up. Then a message flashed across the Dominion channels, one single phrase, one single warning. "Stand down!" Valak's claws dug into the armrest of his command throne. He stared at the incoming warships, at the colossal vessels that could erase his entire fleet in minutes. He had no choice. "Cease all hostile actions," he ordered. "Do not fire." The Dominion fleet obeyed. But it didn't matter, because humanity was already here. Ureth let out a slow breath as the transmission sent. The human sat back slightly, watching the data scroll. "They're hesitating," he murmured. "Good," Cavor said, voice shaking. Then another deep rumble shook the city. Not from the Dominion, not from the warships above, from deeper underground. The human's golden eyes narrowed. "No," Ureth frowned. "What?" The human's face darkened. "Not all of them should be waking up." Another tremor, then another. The screens flickered. More red alerts filled the displays, each one flashing symbols in the ancient human language. Cavor paled as he translated them. "Containment breach." Ureth's blood went cold. "Containment of what?" The human's jaw tightened. "The war wasn't just against ourselves," he said quietly. "There were other things." Another tremor, this one stronger. Dust fell from the ceiling. The security doors groaned as if something far beneath them was moving. The human's face hardened. "We didn't just fight an enemy." His fingers hovered over the console. His golden eyes burned. "We locked something away." A final deep, monstrous growl rumbled from the depths of the planet. Something was waking up. Something that should have stayed buried. The human turned to Ureth. "You need to call your fleet back. Now." The rumbling grew louder, not the sound of warships taking flight, not the hum of ancient machinery reactivating. This was something deeper, something wrong. Ureth felt it in his bones, a low, unnatural vibration, like the very planet itself was afraid. The human moved fast, hands a blur as he input commands into the control panel. Screens flashed red, alarms blared. Subterranean vaults had been breached. Something had escaped. Ureth forced down his panic. "What did you lock away down there?" The human's jaw clenched. "A mistake." The Dominion commander narrowed his eyes. "What kind of mistake?" The human hesitated. Then he turned to Ureth, and for the first time he looked uncertain. "It wasn't just humanity that disappeared," he said. "Something else was wiped out." Cavor's tendrils twitched. Another species? The human's golden eyes burned. Something worse. Another deep tremor. This time the entire city lurched, as if some great force was shifting beneath the surface. The walls groaned. Dust rained from the ceiling. Then, a roar, not mechanical, not artificial, something alive. The lights flickered. The control screens glitched. The symbols shifted into jagged, corrupted text, as if the very system itself was screaming. Cavor gasped. It's overriding the security systems." Ureth spun toward the human. "What the hell is waking up?" The human exhaled sharply. His fingers flexed, curling into fists. "A long time ago," he said quietly. "We weren't alone." The red alerts intensified. The temperature dropped. The air felt heavier. "We ruled the galaxy," the human continued, "but we weren't the first ones to try." Cavor's voice shook. "What do you mean?" The human's gaze hardened. "We exterminated them," he said. "Completely." Ureth's breath caught. "A species?" Erased, not conquered, not subjugated, erased. And now, after 500,000 years, they were coming back. Admiral Valak stood frozen as the second signal came from the planet. Not from the human, not from the warships, from something else. "Sir," an officer stammered, there's something down there." Valak turned to the holographic display. What had once been a dead world was now alive with warnings. And beneath the surface, deep beneath the layers of buried cities and forgotten war machines, something was moving. The Dominion had conquered planets before. They had seen rebellions, armies, biological horrors. But nothing like this. The energy signatures were wrong. Older than the humans. Older than everything. A deep pulse rippled through the scanners. And for the first time in Dominion history, the sensors screamed in fear. Ureth barely had time to react before the floor split open. A deep, jagged crack tore through the ground, splitting the control room in two. Machinery toppled. Cavor barely caught himself before falling into the growing abyss. The human didn't move. He just stared into the dark. Ureth pulled Cavor back, his claws digging into the scientist's arm. "We need to get out of here." But the human smiled. It wasn't amusement. It wasn't confidence. It was relief. "The war never ended," he murmured. Cavor trembled. "What?" The human's golden eyes gleamed. "You asked what happened to us," he said. "Why we vanished." The ground shuddered. Cracks spread across the city. In the distance, human warships began shifting into combat formations. Ureth realized, with growing horror, that this moment was what they had been waiting for. The human turned to him. "We didn't leave," he said. "We locked ourselves away." Ureth's blood went cold. The human's smile faded. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Because we knew they would come back." Then, from the darkness, it emerged. A shape. Massive. Not organic. Not mechanical. Something else. Something wrong. It didn't crawl. It didn't walk. It simply existed, as if reality itself had forgotten how to reject it. Ureth's mind screamed. He felt his body rejecting the thing's presence, like his very cells understood this creature was not meant to be. Cavor collapsed, clutching his head. The human, however, just cracked his neck. And for the first time since waking, he looked satisfied. Finally, he reached for something on his wrist, a small device, a trigger. Ureth barely had time to process what was happening before the human pressed it. A deep, echoing boom rippled through the planet. The sky darkened. Then, from the horizon, the real war fleet rose. Not just the ships in orbit, not just the weapons buried beneath the ground. This was something older, something deadlier, something built for extinction. They had been waiting. For 500,000 years, they had been waiting. And now, as the first of the old enemy emerged from its prison, humanity's greatest weapons turned toward the stars once more. The last human smiled. "Now," he whispered, "we finish this."